Okay, this is Jackie Fu from Shanghai Environmental Monitoring Center. And today I'd like to introduce the ozone pollution in the Yangtze River Delta, as well as our relevant experience on the pollution control. So you could find out the status of the ozone pollution in the Yangtze River Delta, that with the decreased concentration of the PM2.5, but you can find out the increased concentration level of ozone in this region. So not only just Shanghai, but also Jiangsu and the Anhui province, that the pollution concentration has been increased during the past several years. And at the same time that you could find out the spatial distribution in this area, that not only in the Jiangsu, but also the Zhejiang and Shanghai, that the spatial of the ozone has been extended in this area. So you can find out, except for the ozone, but also the concentration of the nitrate dioxide in the key cities in this area is also relatively high. We set up the classification of the ozone pollution in this area, that you could find out there are three major types of the regional pollution. And another key characteristics of the ozone pollution in the Yangtze River Delta is that we pay much attention and find out more and more occurrence of the ozone usually happen together with the PM2.5 pollution. So you can find out during some not very good weather conditions that usually three contiguous cities that the concentrations of PM2.5 and ozone can exceed the standard simultaneously. So we calculated the relevant data in this area that you could find out, except for 2015, the number of the days of the PM2.5 and ozone compound pollution has been gradually increased. And another key characteristics of the ozone in the area that you can find out, one thing is that the maximum, we call it the ozone 8-hour maximum 19th percentage concentration reached 151 microgram cubic meters in 2019. Maybe it's quite similar to the Pearl River Delta region. Ozone has become the key primary pollutant in the Yangtze River Delta. So this is the data in Shanghai. We could find out in the 2013 that the key primary pollutant is PM2.5. However, from the year 2016, that you could find out ozone become more and more important. Right now, in the 2018, 19, and 20s, that the key primary pollutant become the ozone. So which means that ozone becomes the most important pollutant which can impact and affect the non-attainment percentage in Shanghai of the air quality. From this slide, you can find that the non-attainment days of ozone occurred longer and longer. You find out that not only just the occurrence of the date for the whole years, but also the duration of the ozone pollution occurred longer during the daytime. That you could find out the peak wise become wider in Shanghai annually. So we just try to analyze the relevant reasons and the causes of the pollution. Especially we talk about the compound pollution of the PM2.5 and ozone. So this is quite latest information and the pollution days in this year, that you could find out the ozone already become the primary pollutants. So you could find that usually for such a situation, usually we could find out the weather condition usually is bad, which means that the wind speed usually is quite low, and also the relevant humidity is also quite low. So you can find out the low wind speed and high relevant humidity at the night that you can find out not only just in Shanghai, but also the northern area of the Yangtze River Delta that we made the regional ozone pollution. And this is the weather condition. And you could find out the whole area was just under the high pressure system control. So the ozone pollution occurred in the afternoon, and then at the midnight, you could find out the peak of the PM 2.5. So we also use the later to give us the relevant information. The upper figures is the extinction coefficient. So you could find out that there is the high concentration of the PM 2.5. And also at the same time that the ozone, you could also find the ozone residue and the transport in the upper air. So the second reason is that during the midnight, that when the wind speed is quite low, the local formation is also occurred in Shanghai. So the second thing that we also try to use the model to analyze the transportation from the other, the transport of the ozone from other province. So you can find out that the transport of the ozone from Zhejiang accounted for almost 70% in these pollution cases. So when we check out the reasons of the ozone pollution, usually we need to find out the concentration change of the VOC. So you can find under 28 that the average concentration and VOCs was quite high than other province days. So we check out the concentration of the specific VOCs that you can find out the key sources is the painting and the solvent using. And also we can find out the relevant sources of the transportation and the fossil fuel combustion. So we can find out this is the local major emission which contribute for the ozone in local. So another key weather condition for the PM 2.5 that you can find when the ozone pollution was high, so the atmosphere, we think this is also high oxidation. So low wind speed and also the high humidity at midnight, so which promotes the formation of the PM 2.5, especially the nitrate and ammonia in the midnight. So you could find out that this is the compound of the pollution of the ozone and the aerosol. Another indicates that you can find out, except for the high concentration of the ozone, that we can check the backflow of the wind from the sea, that also can provide the high concentration PM at our superstations. So this is also give us the information, not only the ozone, but also the nitrate was transported from the sea. So which means that the high significant peak value of the NOI can also give us such information. There has some long range transport from other province. And also we can find out the boundary layer at the midnight that has been decreased. So this is also give us the information that the adverse weather condition of the low boundary layer is just about 250 meters, and which promotes the local formation of the PM 2.5 in Shanghai. So together with the modeling tools that we can make the source apportionment, that you can find out for the ozone peak value that there are more regional, what we call the long range transport from other province. But in the daytime, that the increase of the ozone concentration also contributed by other province. But comparing with the ozone, that's the more emission contribution is from the local formation as well as the regional transportation, which means that when we talk about the ozone, we need to consider the key and the more important contribution from the other regions. But when we talk about the PM2.5, that we need to consider the local contribution as well as the regional transportation. So this is the relevant experience of the VOC control and the NOx control that we implemented in the Yangtze River Delta. So you can find out the control mechanism of ozone is quite complex, because that you can find out sometimes it's the NOx tetrate, and sometimes that it's VOC-limited or NOx-limited. So currently, there's still no clear roadway of the ozone pollution control in the Yangtze River Delta, but we already studied the pollution control and the emission reduction of the VOC and the NOx. And during the first round of the VOC control, that's one experience that we think is quite important is to implement and set up the legislation and which provide the legal basis for VOC control. So you can find out we not only just can promote the emission control in the petrochemical industry, but we also implement relevant emission standards that for the cooking industries and for the mobile vehicles in making industries, as well as other relevant VOC emission sectors. So all these works that you could find out the relevant actions has been implemented and led by Shanghai Environmental Protection Bureau. Right now, this is called the Ecological Bureau in Shanghai. So you can find out more than 2,000 plants completed the treatment of the VOC projects. So based on all these actions, you can find out the VOC concentration in Shanghai has been decreased by 20% during the past 4 years. And however, the concentration of the nitric dioxide is still remained stable. So we think that the future efforts should be put on the NOx emission control. In Zhejiang province, they also implement the 4 key tasks. So you can find out the long-term governance and together with the short-term challenge. And this is a focus on the VOC control. And the second is to combine the price measures with the scientific control. They pay the key attention to the petrochemical and the chemical industry, as well as the painting and also the solvent using, as well as the oil storage and the transportation. The third one is to implement the standardize of the supervision. So the legislation is still the key task. The final one is that they want to promote the risk prevention and control together with the emission reduction. So this is the details that I will not repeat again, and that maybe the audience can read these slides in details. The final conclusion or the initial recommendation from my view of the point. So this is my last slides. So you can find out during the past years, not only just in Shanghai, but also Jiangsu, Zhejiang, that we made the common efforts to reduce the emission of the VOC and NOx. However, our common efforts should be still set up to make the common air quality protection objective. Especially currently, the national regional strategy that's called the Yangtze River Delta Integration Policy. This is the national policy, so can provide us the better platform of the common air quality protection. The second thing is that we still need the scientific research and especially the scientific evaluation for the emission control. So you can find out all of us that we studied the emission control of the VOC or the NOx emission. However, we still have no clear idea what's the real benefit or what's the practical efforts and the impact of the ozone pollution control. So we think that the scientific roadway is quite important for the policy making. The third thing is that in order to provide the scientific evaluation, we still need the better or the precious monitoring network, not only just in the cities, but also we need to develop the monitoring network in the rural and the suburban area. And also it's quite important, the data sharing is still our common challenge, that we need to promote the data sharing to make the better understanding of the air quality status in this area. The final one, we think that based on the scientific research and practice monitoring, we need to make the better and more important efforts on the pollution control, not only just from the sources as well as the terminal control, but we also need to promote the process monitoring to provide the whole process emission control in the Yangtze River Delta. So, okay, this is my presentation today. So thank you very much, and your suggestion is welcome.